Jessica. What's happening? How are you? How you doing?
Great,
Good.
thanks.
Good.
Thank you.
How are you?
Welcome to Backstage Fast Past. Fem House fam, welcome. We've got the three coolest gals that you'll talk to in probably quite a long time. They all work for Infectious, which is a UK-based company that helps artists. It's a full-scale marketing, promotions, label services. They do a little bit of everything. Our gals here represent label, radio, and press. Thank you guys for being here. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks for having
Thank you
us.
for having us.
I know it's late in the UK. So you get bonus points for letting us have your time, your nighttime here.
It's all good. It's all good.
Absolutely.
So I have a question that I always start with whenever I talk to anyone. I'm gonna ask it of each of you individually. I'm gonna start with you, Abby. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So funny enough, I did actually want to be a journalist. So my career has kind of followed that, but I did specifically want to focus on radio and reading out the weather. I don't know why specifically, but here we are.
Any regrets? It sounds like you
I
got
feel like
75% of the way there or so.
Yeah, I feel like my path was pretty clear. It obviously when I changed my mind lots as I was growing up, but we were talking about this earlier, and it was always radio presenter presenting the weather.
Do you ever present the weather?
No.
Never say never.
Well, yeah, sorry guys, I'm off.
Jessica, what about you?
I actually just wanted to be famous, so literally doing anything possible really that would get me into the limelight. But obviously, yeah, I took a better, I think, path for myself. I don't think fame is really for me. Looking back on it, I just think, yeah, it's just when you're a kid, you kind of just want to you just have the biggest imagination possible. So that's what I was like, really.
Any regrets? I mean, you're famous here. You're famous right now in this moment with Fem House. But you also have a great working with artists and working with musicians. You have remarkable proximity to fame. So is it that's close enough?
Yeah, I think that's close enough for me. It's amazing to be working with so many talented artists. And I think, working alongside them and rather than being the artist itself is quite nice. So yeah, I think I've kind of reached that goal in some way. But yeah, I think it's a better goal for me.
Cool. What about you, Lucy?
Well, I think I was similar to Abby, really. I sort of changed my mind all the time and flitted between lots of things. When I was a proper kid, I was just obsessed with animals, obsessed with dogs and horses and ponies and beetles and moles and everything. So I wanted to be a vet, quite typical child's dream. But then as I got older, I got much more into music and the performance side of music, and wanted to be an actor or a professional musician. And I still do a bit of music. So yeah, I guess I kind of have stayed true to that, but then obviously pivoted into working in the business side.
Gotcha. So we've got a vet, we've got a famous person, and we've got a weather person. How did you get here in this moment doing exactly what you do for Infectious? Let's start with you, Jess.
Yeah, so I actually did a journalism degree at university. And then I did some sort of work experience placements at Mixmag and Enemy and places like that. And, I really enjoyed writing, but it wasn't until the final year of my course that I realized that getting a full-time journalism job in the UK was quite difficult. So I kind of ventured into the PR side and did internships in London. And that's how I kind of got into music PR really, and decided I working on that side as well.
Explain to the folks what exactly you do as part of the PR team there at Infectious.
Yeah, so I'm a senior PR manager at Infectious PR, and basically we handle press campaigns for external clients, and I also run press campaigns for artists that release on our labels that we manage internally.
That's a fun time, right? Because it's like it's a really important part of the process, I would argue, because you're setting the tone for the story. Like you're telling people the narrative and the story before they get a chance to like hear and engage with the art. So it's like I've always, you know, like thought of it as like one of the most important processes, if not the most important one, when you're rolling out a project. And it's really cool to sort of give artists a voice in that way, right, where they can control the narrative and tell their stories and like be vulnerable about the art, which is already in itself vulnerable. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We really like to encourage artists that we work with to share our story with us, so then we can pitch it to publication, so they can, you know, tell their story to a wider audience while sharing their art and their music. I think it's like really important to share that wider narrative, and you know, 9 times out of 10 they've got a really amazing story to share.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan. Like I, you know, growing up, like reading liner notes and like looking through the lyrics and like reading the thank yous and stuff like that. Like that sort of like richness that comes around a project is always it's always been like one of my favorite things about engaging with music in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, there's so many like different meanings you can take behind someone's track, especially when you're like telling it to press. There's like obviously the technical side, and then there's like the deeper meaning and the stories behind it that, you know, sometimes there might be quite sensitive in sharing, but is always, you know, worth sharing to like influence others, inspire others. And yeah, that's what we try and help do for them.
Very cool. So I imagine you and Abby work remarkably close together, right? I mean, you're probably coming up with a lot of the campaigns in tandem, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Me and Jess have had quite similar roads into how getting into the job as well. But I also studied journalism and PR at uni.
Is there a thing like that made you pick radio? Because I don't think that people think of radio as journalism, especially now. But it is very much, right? And like I said, you guys are sort of sharing the same strategies and like you have the same goal. You've just picked like different avenues for it, but it's like, you know, it's the same different lanes of the same highway. You know what I mean? It's how I sort of think of it. Would you agree?
I mean, I'm not the radio expert anymore as much as I wanted to be when I was younger. Lucy is probably the best person to answer that question.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand. Absolutely. I mean, I came at it from a kind of quite a different perspective to these girls. Obviously, they kind of studied PR and journalism at uni, and I guess that has quite a kind of clearly defined path. Whereas I came at it from the performance side. So I studied music at uni, did a creative degree, and I think went into that feeling as though I wanted to be a professional musician and to pursue performing and singing and writing music. And you know, not to discourage anyone, but I think I realized that it is quite a difficult journey to actually support yourself as a musician. And I think for me, I the ways that I saw my peers making money out of actually like making and creating music was doing more like function bands, going and singing on cruise ships and singing at weddings and doing covers and things like that. Whereas for me, I just wanted to be like writing music. So I definitely had a bit of a moment at a kind of junction where I was like, this doesn't feel authentic to me to be going and trying to do the covers band thing, because I don't feel as though I'll have enough energy to put into the creative side of music. So I began to explore other avenues that, you know, meant I could stay in the industry and still make a living and build a career within music, but not necessarily like actually being on the music side myself. So yeah, I then explored internships, and I think that you probably hear that a lot, I guess, when you speak to people on the industry side. How did you get into the industry? you know, hopefully one day it won't be the way, but a lot of the time you do have to kind of undertake unpaid opportunities of work experience, just to purely get your foot in the door. So, you know, I was doing internships alongside working in call centers and pubs and crazy other jobs, and then eventually landed at doing radio, which is what I do now. And I've kind of, you know, risen up through the ranks of that from a junior, and now kind of heading up the department at Infectious. But yeah, I think, you know, we all work like really, really closely together, and there's definitely a lot of transferability in terms of PR and press and radio, in terms of like trying to tell someone's story, but there's definitely different nuances between the two, I suppose, between the two fields.
One of the things I've always really liked about working with Infectious and talking to y'all is that like every department is on every call at every meeting. Like you guys are really very collectively and collaboratively working together, which is I think really beneficial to the artists too, right? Like everyone's taking a very holistic view of the art and of the project and of the person behind the art, and it all ends up working really well.
Definitely, because I think we all each have our, you know, we all see the world through our own lens, like us three girls and the other members of our team. And so whenever we have a discovery call with an artist, or, you know, unpicking their story or like the narrative behind an album or whatever it might be, speaking to a new label, we all come away with kind of different perspectives of, you know, what people said, and we'll all latch onto different elements. So I think it's really beneficial, that we always, you know, work as a team and continue to sort of share our ideas, because we all learn from each other.
Sure. I want to go back to something that you said, and like everybody, I think all three of you sort of have the same track in getting here, and it's just like a very common one that we hear. It's just like, you know, I've wanted to do this thing, and I got an internship, and I worked 15 other jobs while I took this internship so I could learn how to do this thing to get here. Abby, did you do an internship as well?
So I actually, well, after university, I went to a PR agency, so not anything to do with music. It was all brand based, but the internships I did have were at other PR agencies. Obviously having internships is amazing, but I do think because I had an experience within a PR agency, it did mean that you have quite a lot of skills that are transferable when you do shift over to a music PR agency, even though obviously it is in a little bit of a different lane. But yeah, so I did internships, but not specifically around music.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the conversation that we're constantly having, and we have it in this context a lot with people that we talk to, is like, we're sort of thinking about barriers to entry, and that, you know, that obviously applies to artists in a lot of ways. It's like you have to sing for your supper or go work at Starbucks or something. Like, how much time do you have to dedicate to anything outside of like survival, right? But it's something that's not often talked about on the business side. You know, it's just like an unpaid internship, and, you know, there are some people that can afford that. Maybe they have parents that support them, or they're on scholarship at school, so like the financial load is sort of like lower. But other people have to, you know, go to the internship during the day and like work at a bar at night. And then also, where do you find time to engage with this creative industry, which is all about networking and like going to parties and going to shows? And like that's one of the, you know, like when you think of barriers to entry, you think about how those things impact diversity, right? Which is what we're collectively trying to address. What sort of like, I know that you guys are, you know, you're sort of like some of the, I would think of you as like the bedrocks of Infectious and like the holistic view. Like as gatekeepers, how do you sort of like pull these levers so that like you're leveraging this, like these privileges that you have as gatekeepers, but like bearing in mind like how you guys got here and how artists get here, and like how difficult it is to get to where we are?
I think one of the, I think one of the good things, I don't know if how the schemes and stuff work over in the US, but I think certainly in the UK, we've really benefited from various government schemes, which have meant that we are been able to pay interns for like a 6-month period, which is really great for us as a business, because it means that people who might not have necessarily considered a job in music have been able to work with us. And yeah, it's been through the Kickstart scheme, and it has been really good and it has definitely presented a range of different people to us that probably we wouldn't have seen before. Yeah, it's been really good. We've got a couple with us at the moment, so yeah,
that's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, in the UK, it does so many things better than the United States does, but that just like the very simple act of being able to pay somebody that's working for you is a huge one. And there's so many people, you know, here in the US, that's not a foregone conclusion. And in fact, a lot of the big companies exploit that. And so, you know, you end up with the same talent pool turning over and turning over and turning over, and that ends up with homogeny, right? Which is actually completely antithetical to like a creative industry, let alone something like music.
Absolutely.
Lucy, I know you wanted to make a point just a few moments ago. What was it?
Well, I was going to say the same as Abby about the, you know, the Kickstarter scheme, which was something that our government introduced actually as a result of the pandemic. So it's kind of been like one of the few like positive, well, not the few, there are lots of things, but one of the really great kind of things which has come out of the pandemic, despite all the casualties and, you know, awful things which have happened to our industry. I think that's something which has offered like an amazing platform and opportunities for young people to get into industries which they never would have dreamed of. But I guess another, in terms of flipping your question on its head, in terms of being gatekeepers and you know, making sure that we're being inclusive with people, getting people into industry. I think our labels, you know, we have quite a hand in kind of A&Ring the music that comes through and listening through demos and helping the labels that we want, helping the label bosses decide, you know, what people to sign and things. And I think we're always, whenever like a female or female identifying artist, or, you know, someone from a minority group, whenever an artist comes through from that group, we always are paying attention, aren't we? And actively actually searching for artists, because it's just, you know, hugely still underrepresented in the industry, particularly women and women identifying artists. One of our labels actually has literally this week decided that for the rest of the year, they're only going to sign female identifying artists and people of color, which is amazing. Cool. And Friends, which is Monkey's label. Monkey's a kind of house producer, DJ over here in the UK, really, really cool artist. So her label is brilliant label, lots of kind of cool left field underground house. So if anyone is listening who's a producer and has any demos lying around, please do hit us up. I'm sure that the guys can link you guys up with our emails, you know, after the call.
Yeah, just for context for the FemHouse community, Infectious is, like I said earlier, like one of my favorite companies to work with. And they're so intentional about inclusivity and like about DEI work and about making sure that this business that we're in reflects the community that it serves, such that they've often approached us and said, who are you listening to? Like, we're looking for more women. We're looking for more BIPOC creators. We're looking for more LGBTQIA creators. And like that intention is often the difference between sort of like lip service and like, of course we want things to be more diverse, and actually going out and changing and making an impact. So with the FemHouse fam, we are remarkably grateful for y'all. I want to take a minute just because I think that like the name of the company is Infectious PR. And like, obviously, you know, that's how it was founded. But I think of you guys, and I know that you guys too, like you're probably one of the most full scale like companies that I've ever worked with, which is funny because like you're a small company, like a small, like tight, like family company. Whichever of you feel like, actually, I would actually love to hear this from your three perspectives. Like, what is Infectious PR to you, Abby?
Oh gosh. I guess, yeah, a PR agency. And I am really proud to work there because I think that, you know, we speak to a lot of people in this industry, and we are really lucky in the fact that there are so many women that work in the company. And it makes such a difference just being able to, you know, check people and just making sure that everyone's sort of aligned with basically empowering women and more. Another part of the fact I love about Infectious is that Infectious is technically split into two sides of the company. So if we've got the PR side, and then we also have the label services side. And one of the things I just love about working there is you really do get to know the ins and outs of how the industry works, because you're seeing how to promote it for external clients. So that could be someone's album or someone's track, but then you've got the label services side who are trying to make money from the labels. So it's basically you get so many strings to your bow, and yeah, just a massive understanding, I think, of how particularly dance music works. And it's really fun to work there.
It is fun. We're all just like really good buds, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think people know that and like that. Because I think, you know, when we have like particularly like in-person meetings with clients and people, you can just like feel chemistry, can't you? And it makes us feel passionate and want to show up to work and work really hard, because we love what we do and we love the team, and yeah, it's good.
Jess, what about you? What is Infectious to you?
I think like we've been allowed working in this company to kind of like really be attentive towards the artists and kind of, you know, be like human towards them and really care about, you know, what they're doing, and kind of work with them like as much as possible, like on a deeper scale, because, you know, we could just, you know, take on loads of PR campaigns and, you know, really overwhelm ourselves with work. But we've kind of, you know, created like a working model where we can, you know, really dive deep onto artist campaigns, and, you know, work together as like a team. Because also I think having like, you know, PR, radio and all that sort of thing under one umbrella in a company allows us to kind of like bounce off each other quite well, and instead of like working like an external radio company, for example. I think working together as a whole has really helped us, you know, create like this unique family vibe, I guess.
Yeah, I always feel the family vibe whenever I talk to y'all, and you guys are the best Zoomers in the business. Like, you have the best chemistry on what is actually like remarkably awkward. It's really awkward to talk to people on video and not be there with them, especially while you're looking at yourself. Like, it gets weird, but you guys are wonderful at it. I'm gonna pause here real quick and let everybody know that is watching that if you guys have questions, start dropping them in the Q&A chat, and I will get to them at the end. We only have a couple more questions yet left here. So formulate, drop them in the chat, and I will go through them at the end. Yeah, so it's you know, it's really interesting that Infectious is like, you know, the PR side and the label services side, and, you know, sort of one hand washes the other. What is the main consideration for, I guess, both all of you individually and like the company and working with artists? Because you guys have cool artists. You're never chasing trends. You're not chasing, it doesn't feel like you're chasing like crazy profit in any ways. It really feels like everybody at the company from Gerald down has like passion for the projects that you're involved with. And like, you know, the genres, you know, under the dance umbrella, sure, but like, you know, the artists can be quite different. What gets an artist comes to you, and I know for a fact that each and every one of you listen to every demo, every second of every demo, and then you talk about it and you sit with it and you chat with each other about it. What is it that like grabs you and gets you pumped to work with an artist?
I think from just speaking from the press perspective, and I'm sure Jess probably can expand on this, but I think from my point of view, obviously the music has to be great, but one of the most important things for me is having a story and a narrative to go with. The worst thing is when you do work with artists and their music is great, but if they haven't got a story to go with it and they have little bits about their personality that make journalists want to talk to them, it does make our lives a bit harder. So yeah, I think for me, it's one of the most important things is having a great narrative and a brand to an artist. And also, yeah, the music has to be great.
Yeah, it starts with the music, but I think, you know, when I'm advising artists too, like I come from management, I'm just like, this is a wonderful project. What are you trying to say with it? What,
Yeah,
like, why is it
exactly.
important? Why should I listen? You can tell people that music is good all day long, and that will, in a lot of cases, be true. But like, what is the connection that you're drawing from this music to anyone that hears it? Like, what about it is going to grab me? So I feel that that's really sound advice, and one that I think artists need to heed more often than not. What about you, Jess?
Yeah, like kind of what Abby's saying, really, you know, like the artist, from a press perspective, the artist wants, you know, people, listeners, fans, whatever, to consume their music. And to do that, they kind of have to, you know, share a story with an audience of a publication that resonates, and kind of, you know, connect with the fan on a deeper level, to kind of draw them into the music and go listen to their music and go listen to like their whole like catalogue even, I would say. And also just, you know, having a great brand and look in general, like kind of like before you come to us, like understanding your identity, and what you're trying to achieve and your goals, and how you want to kind of, you know, tell that to the world.
Mm-hmm. Lucy, what do you think?
Sorry.
I was asking Lucy what she thinks.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I think, you know, much the same, like on the radio side, you know, I think even more so for radio, like sonically, when I'm imagining working a track for a campaign, it has to kind of have quite a clearly sonically defined path, because obviously radio shows, you know, like there's radio shows for every genre that you could ever dream of, and radio stations for, you know, anything, like, but I think each show has their own kind of sonic footprint, and so you have to be able to imagine the track sitting like in the mix of someone's show, and fitting in consistently with whatever their sound might be. So yeah, definitely sonically, and you know, we always look at the brand, but I think it's just like originality and authenticity, and that's not really something that you can kind of like write like a Bible or a handbook on how to do. But I think my advice would really be just to try and be authentic, try and do whatever, follow your gut, you know, and don't try and emulate a sound which feels like popular or current, because we get a lot of, we listen to so much music every single week, and we get a lot of tracks that come through the door that, you know, you listen to it and you go, if you were to like write a recipe for like a pop song or a, you know, a pop house track, you hear this track and you go, yeah, like it has all the right ingredients. Like it has, you know, the top line and the kick drums that are perfectly compressed and a great piano line or whatever it might be. But there's just sometimes something missing. And I think you can't, it's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is, but I guess just trying to remain true to you and your artistry. And I think that's something which comes with time and practice, and just creating, like just making loads and loads and loads of things, and then you'll eventually get, like, out of maybe 10 songs you might get one really, really great idea which sticks. Yeah,
that's a good point. Specifically where authenticity is concerned, because it's like it's one of those intangibles, and you know when it's missing, and you might not be able to put your finger on exactly what it is, but you feel it. And like, you know, on a base level, like music is this very sort of like transformative, like ethereal idea, right? You know, like obviously like we listen to music, but like also mostly we're feeling it. And if the feel is off, like we can tell, you know, like, and not just on a professional level, like the fans can tell, everybody can tell if you're putting out a project or a song or a track or whatever that, you know, that you don't, you yourself don't actually fuck with, because you're trying to be something that you think that everybody is. So that's really great advice. And that's one of the bits of advice that I don't think we hear from the business side a lot, because business, like we're a capitalistic society, right? So like business is like, I want to make money, just make sure you put vocals in the first 15 seconds. It's really nice to hear you guys, and this is again one of the reasons why I love working with y'all and chatting with y'all, for you guys as professionals and as gatekeepers and as like culture setters to say like, yo, it's okay to be true for yourself, if you're being true to yourself, like there is a place for you, and like we'll find it. Like don't go chasing what you think the greater mainstream wants to hear.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, like obviously sometimes you might think you're being original, and it's a bit of a process of kind of putting stuff out and getting feedback and going, oh, okay, like, you know, 2 years on, you listen back and you reflect and you think, okay, I'm not sure really what I was doing with that, but that's fine. That was like part of my journey. So I think not being afraid to just like, you know, send it round to people, send it to people for feedback, and be persistent in that sense. Yeah, don't be afraid like to think, oh, I have to wait until I have the perfect product. You know, it's always good to get different people's ears on it. And but yeah, obviously don't be guided by too many different people's opinions.
No.
Yeah.
I think like the sonic landscape is always changing as well in what people want to listen. And, you know, something that you do create that is original could be like the next big thing. You never know. And it's like really important to like, you know, stay true to what you're making and what you believe in, instead of kind of maybe being influenced by, you know, the current sound and what you're hearing is like big on the radio at the moment, because the next like big thing could be just around the corner with a totally different sound.
Yeah. Integrity, Femme House fan, remember that. Integrity, authenticity. There is a place for you. There's only one you. Remember that when you're creating. With that sage advice from all of you, my final question that I like to ask everyone that I chat with, I'll start with you, Abby. If you're giving advice to your younger self, let's say yourself from 15 years ago or so, what would you say?
I think I would say stop worrying about what other people are doing in their lives. Like if you are enjoying something, just do it. You know, I think me, Lucy and Jess are all at that stage of our lives where all of our friends are doing totally different things. Some people are getting married, some people are working as lawyers, and you just should never compare yourself to someone else. If you're doing something that makes you happy, just go with that.
Good advice. Lucy, what about you?
I think mine would probably be to have faith in my own opinion a bit more, and value them as much as I've valued other people's, and I guess be a bit more assertive. But I think that is definitely like the advice I would give myself. But on the flip side of that, like you kind of learn that through the experiences that you have, and I think those experiences are as valuable as anything, because you go through it and then you're like, okay, that's taught me like a really big lesson, and maybe I never would have learned that lesson, or I might not have learned it until further along down the line. But yeah, and I think just I think it was similar to Abby, really. Like I still definitely struggle with that, and I think social media is a whole thing. And you know, we're fortunate enough that we kind of, our generation, we're all quite similar age group, Jess, Abby and I think we were kind of on the cusp of social media being such a huge thing as it is today, and I think it's so tough for everyone, but particularly if you're a creator or an artist or a musician. So I would probably agree with Abs, try not to get too caught up in what other people are doing. You know, yeah, otherwise you'll never get anything done. If you feel like you're not doing it right, you'll just be stunted, and you're like, I don't know what to do because they're doing this and they're doing this, and then you just kind of freeze and just keep trucking on.
Yeah, you can't run a race without looking straight ahead at your own lane. So I feel that. Jess, what about you?
I would say to always know and understand your worth and what you're capable of. I think, you know, try and not let others get the better of you in that way, and always know that you can do it, whatever that may be, and to try not doubt yourself. I think like it's always better to try something if you can and go for it, instead of maybe not doing it and then kind of like living in regret by not doing it. I think like if you have the opportunity to do something, you know, keep pushing, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. At least you know you've tried.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Good stuff. We like it. Thank y'all. It was a fun time chatting with you. I have a couple of questions here. The first is from Rose Wild. I typically skip all the narrative and skip straight to the question, but this is quite sweet, so I'm going to read the whole thing. Rose Wild says, hello. I just want to say how refreshing this chat has been. It can sometimes feel isolating in such a male-dominated industry, but to hear people so passionate about chasing diversity is wonderful. Rose also says, I have my debut single out tomorrow. Congratulations, Rose. We're quite proud of you. That is literally at least 85% of the battle. It's just putting the thing out. So good on you, Rose. I would love to know your thoughts on whether it is worth it for new artists to spend the money on radio plugging. The landscape has clearly changed a lot in the last few years. So in your experience, how valuable is radio nowadays when trying to capture initial fan base?
It's a question that we get asked a lot, and something that people come to us who are all different. You know, we work with people from all different stages of their career, from people who are like right at the top, signed to like 10-year major label deals, right down to people who are kind of putting out their debut release like you, Rose. I think we always try and give like genuine ethical advice, because when you are funding your own project, you know, to be like transparent with you, radio campaigns aren't cheap, because, you know, they take quite a lot of time, and obviously it's our expertise and all the rest of it. And I think I would always say, it's hard to say without hearing your music, and I'd love to hear it. And you know, if you've got like social links, please do put them in the chat and we can check them out. But I think there are things that you can do early on in your career yourself before you start assigning budget to promotion. And I think there are things you can do which will have a more of a like tangible return on investment for you, and help you kind of build your brand before you then go ahead and engage a radio campaign. I mean, we're really lucky in the UK because we have, I'm sure you guys are aware, BBC Radio 1 and the BBC that we have over here. But we have a platform called BBC Introducing, which is an incredible platform for unsigned artists. It's like a portal online where you can upload your music and it will get considered for your kind of local regional station. And they have a weekly show, a 2-hour show where they showcase all of the best tracks that have been uploaded that week. So it's a brilliant way for people to kind of get a bit of local radio coverage and find their local DJ who can really champion them. I think depending on where you are, I don't know, there are definitely platforms like this in other countries. I know Australia particularly, they have Triple J have their own one. It's called Triple J Unearthed, and that, you know, there are other ones in all different parts of the world. But I think you can just like go out there and research. I'm sure you have an idea of maybe some similar artists or some radio stations that you listen to where you would love to hear your music played. And I think you can go out there and research those. And, you know, don't be afraid to slide into people's DMs, presenters' DMs. Perhaps, you know, maybe don't go for like the big national radio stations, but definitely like some local stations, some cool online shows. Don't be afraid to slide into their DMs. At the end of the day, radio presenters are looking for new music. That is like why they do what they do. They are passionate about finding new music and championing new, exciting talent. So I think it's a difficult question to answer without kind of hearing the music, because every different genre is very nuanced. Pop music is like a whole world. Obviously, we do a lot of dance music, which there are definitely, you know, various avenues to get into. But the other thing I would say is if you were to explore working with an agency for a campaign, generally, and it's the same on the press side, we do require quite a lot of lead time. So, you know, you've obviously got this single out tomorrow, and honestly, like, wish you so much luck with it. I think generally, like, we would normally want like 4 to 6 weeks lead time so that we can kind of map out a bit of a strategy for the campaign and have a think about the targets and make sure that we're aligned with you on who we're targeting, and just make sure that we kind of have enough time to get the best results possible.
What an answer, Rose. I hope you got what you needed. That was the most remarkable free game that you could probably get ever. So Rose, I hope you're still watching. I dropped in the chat, I asked you where you're located. Feel free to answer. And also, we want to hear your song. Send it to us.
Please
Here
do.
she is. Rose is in the UK. And I'm based in the UK, and I've uploaded to the BBC Introducing Uploader. It's a fantastic system. If you'd like to listen to the track, it's on Beatport as Rose, that's R-O-Z-E, Wild. It's called Polka Dot. Not sure if I can send the link on here in case it's flagged as spam. My label is currently working with Listen Up on a radio campaign for the single. So I think my case is that I'm worried that it doesn't go well and then it's game over. Anyway, haha, thank you so much for your answer. Rose, we're proud of you, yo. It's hard to be an artist. It's even hard to be a working artist. It's even harder to release things and have to sort of like wait on people to judge it and receive it. So we're all rooting for you. I hope you got the answer to your question. I personally can't wait to listen to Polka Dot.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Okay, check it out.
One, Rose.
Okay, I have another question here from Francesca. Thank you all very much for your time this evening. I love the ethos of Infectious PR and how you work with artists on such a personal level. I've got 2 questions. 1, do you work with artists on a long-term basis or only during a release campaign?
Yeah, so it kind of varies, to be honest, depending on who we work with. Our like ideal campaign would be to work with artists long term and build their brand and their profile, and you know, follow them on their journey, and you know, work on every aspect of their artistry, from the music to, you know, their tours to, you know, anything that they're doing to kind of put themselves out there. We will work, you know, one-off single campaigns, because we work with a lot of major labels, but the end goal is to always kind of make sure we're telling that story in the end, and we will always try and see if we can work long term with the artists going forward. I guess you guys feel the same, Abby and Luce.
Yeah,
Definitely.
even if it's just like a 4-week campaign to release a track, it's so nice to be able to work with that artist after those initial 4 weeks, because I think just from a press perspective, you know that you can achieve so much more with lead time. Obviously, you can't get something in a print magazine if you've only got a couple of weeks before it comes out, and just because obviously how things work. But yeah, it's just really nice when you can really create a narrative and really like dig into an artist's mind to work your way up to those big pieces. So you could start with small introducing features, and then, you know, in a couple of years' time, you could be on the front cover, who knows?
Yeah, I think sorry, Luce. I think, yeah, it all adds up, what Abby is saying, like you start building your story with those kind of tastemaker, smaller publications that have like kind of a really niche audience, and then you kind of build from there with when you're working with artists long term. For example, one of my artists I've been working with since November, and we've managed to get a piece in Mix Mag, and that's kind of like for 4 months on now. So it does take some time to build to that level, and it's totally worth it. And you get to kind of, you know, join them on that journey. And I think it's really beneficial for them and us.
Yeah, that's a good point. Coming from the management end, like one of the questions I get is like, how do I go about building my team? And I always say, just, you got to find people that are good, really good at what they do, that want to be along for the ride, no matter where you are on the journey, that want to, you know, sort of like, you know, hop in the car with you for a little bit, not to just go down to the corner store, but like, you know, on a little bit of a road trip.
Yeah.
Because, you know, especially it's so important as an artist when you're constantly changing, you're constantly evolving, and your idea of what the vision is constantly in shift. Like, you want people that like buy in to not just the initial idea that you have, but like who you are as a person, right? Like, and it goes back to what Lucy was saying earlier about authenticity. Like, authenticity is sort of like this thing that remains even as all the stuff around it shifts. And, you know, when you're building a team and choosing who to work with on your projects, I think that like when that is identified early, like you'll always find a common thread, like no matter how the journey changes. So that's really good advice.
Yeah, and I think you have to kind of like working with artists long term, you're kind of like constantly trying to break through the noise, because from a press perspective, there's so many artists like sending publications and music, and only so many journalists working for the publications, especially the big ones. So to, you know, work with artists long term, you're constantly, you know, trying to get that artist in front of the journalists, instead of saying like doing a 4-week campaign for one single, speaking to the publications for those 4 weeks, and then once that campaign's finished, it kind of like, you know, takes a back seat. You kind of want to keep pushing that artist forward.
Sure. Francesca's second question, it's a cool one, and I'm excited to hear y'all's answer. I'm going to start with Lucy on this one. What's your favorite artist or campaign you've worked on?
That's a difficult question. No favoritism around here.
Come on, you've got one recently.
I love working with like both sides of the spectrum. I adore working with development acts who, you know, it's one of their first releases ever, because the fulfillment that you get from seeing someone like, you know, what might be deemed as a bit of a smaller win for a kind of more established artist can actually be like quite life-changing for someone who it's one of their first releases. So there's a few. I mean, we've recently been working with a Bristol act, so Bristol's the city where we're based in the UK, called Paper Dragon, who have kind of just, they basically launched really at the beginning of the pandemic, and they've kind of been releasing independently, and now they're having conversations with major labels. And I think Abby and I feel as though we've had, you know, a huge role and been part of their team from the beginning. So that's been really great. I guess on the other end of the spectrum, I do also love working with the stuff which, you know, does go all the way commercially. One of the kind of bigger ones that we've done in recent times is a Craze Do It To It. So if anyone has TikTok, you probably would have seen or heard that song somewhere over the last year or so. It's been an incredible campaign, and he actually came over to the UK for the first time about 2 weeks ago, and he had a show at the Brixton Academy, which is a huge kind of arena venue in London, supporting Tiesto, which was amazing. And
cool.
He played Do It To It, and I cannot even explain like how emotional I felt. It actually makes me feel emotional talking about it now, because it was like a sold out gig, like 5,000 people in the crowd, and it was his first time ever in the UK. And obviously, you know, we would send reports every week with, you know, it's been added to Radio 1 playlist, it's on Capital FM playlist, and everything kept on growing, and there were all these stats, and you see it on paper. But when you go in that room and you see like a whole packed out room singing back every lyric to the song, it's just really powerful. And he came off stage and felt quite emotional, and I was like, I feel like a proud mother. And I think he was like, shut up, I'm trying to be cool in front of yesterday. But yeah, that was like a real moment for me, because I guess he's had a huge year, but in reality this was like one of his very first releases, so he's kind of fast tracked to commercial success, so still has that humility about him. So that's my one.
That is a great one, and I'll say to all the artists watching, like, find somebody to be on your team who gets emotional talking about your humongous comments the way that Lucy just did. When I'm talking about somebody who's going to hop in the car and go on a road trip for you, that's what I'm talking about. You want somebody that feels the wins as deeply and as profoundly as you will, because a person like that will never stop working to make sure that you get some wins. That was wonderful, Lucy. What a wonderful answer. Mm-hmm. Abby, what about you?
Probably last year, I worked Follow Moore's album, and I got him on the cover of Mix Mag, and that was a very proud moment, because Mix Mag has always been one of my favorite publications, both in work and outside of work, and Follow Moore has been one of my favorite artists. So it was really it was a passion project, but through work, it was great. But also, yeah, to just echo really what Lucy said, working with in like not lower tier, that's not the right word, introducing sort of artists as well. When you get wins in DJ Mag and Mix Mag, they are so appreciative of what you've done. And it, yeah, just when people say like, oh, thank you so much, like this is amazing, it just makes it all worth it. And I think quite a lot of the time, a lot of people don't see the value in press as much as they have traditionally, because people obviously digest news very differently now. But I will say that, you know, all of the different avenues that we do, whether it's streaming or radio or everything kind of encompasses one. So if you can say, you know, when you're pitching to Spotify that you've got Mix Mag support or you've had Radio 1 support, etc., it all comes as one. So yeah, it's nice when we can lean on each other a little bit for those introducing artists.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Jess?
One of mine was probably, well, I have a couple, but one that stands out is working with Ashiba. And we initially started working with her short term. So she had a release coming out on one of Defected sub labels, D4 Dance. And we, you know, started working with her there and realized like how great she was, and that beyond her music, she had so much to share. When we're working on campaigns, we like have process in place to try kind of get as much information out of the artist as possible. And yeah, she had so much to share. She had like a really great, like rich cultural heritage. She'd lived in like multiple places. She used, like, obviously she's like an amazing producer, and she's a vocalist as well and a singer songwriter, and she sings in her sets and it's amazing. And she's had all these great releases in the past, but not, you know, much press. So to start working with her, like, and realize how great she was, we could really, you know, start working with her long term. So that's what we did. And we're still working with her now and building her now. And she's had, you know, some great wins telling her story with the likes of like Resident Advisor, Red Bull, and places like that. Because she's just done so much, and it's just so like amazing to see. Like, she used to be a zookeeper. She was like one of the best in her team in like a basketball league in, I think, Egypt. It's just crazy how much stuff she's done to kind of like share her story and how she's got from there to being a producer and to this point now is just like amazing to be a part of. And, you know, kind of like sharing her story in different ways, different press, like not just music press. Like Red Bull is like kind of like sporty as well, so it's kind of, you know, like expanding her narrative to other audiences has been amazing.
Very cool. So I got one last question here. It is from Anna Elena Martinez. Anna Elena wants to know how to slide into DMs. Basically, how can I write proper DMs to offer my music? I'm always terrified that I'll bother someone.
Well, I would say we spend a lot of our time sending emails to people and not getting replies. And I think that's what our job is. So I think persistence is definitely important and very key. But being mindful of people's time and going about it in a very polite and careful way. And I think one of the things, I mean, the girls, you know, like you guys might have different input here. I think keeping things quite short and snappy, I would probably suggest, until you've built a bit more of a meaningful relationship with someone. Just don't beat around the bush too much, get to the point, send them a very easy to listen to link for starters. So WeTransfers are like absolute no-no. People want like a streamable link. So, you know, most people are out on the move a lot of the time. You know, they want to be able to load something up on their phone quickly whilst they're commuting to work. So SoundCloud link, Dropbox, I would say are probably the best options. And yeah, I think just like keep it really short and snappy. Like, don't be afraid to convey your passion, but really you just want to convey like a couple of really key pointers about yourself. you should never be terrified of bothering people. You know, anyone who's like a tastemaker or a journalist, they do it essentially. I know that sometimes they can feel as though they're on a bit of a pedestal. And at the end of the day, it's often just because they're really busy people. But you have to remember that those people are doing that because in the very first place, they're passionate about what they do and they're passionate about listening to music. So just bear that in mind and don't be scared. And yeah, just keep trying, keep being persistent. I'm sure you'll get through to people eventually. I'm sure the girls might have other advice.
I'd just say as well, just make sure it is the right person, and like, especially if it doesn't fit their tastes, I like just do really thorough checks, because you don't want to send something to someone one time and then them open it like, why on earth have they sent me that? That's nothing to do with anything I like. So I just say do your research on who you're going to DM first, just to make sure it does fit their tastes. Something that we do quite a lot in the press side of things is we like to put for fans of and put similar artists who, you know, that might inspire you, or who sound similar sonically, obviously not the same, but you know, if you can see that a journalist or I don't know, radio presenter has been championing an artist who kind of sits in the sort of lane that you're in, it's always nice to flag that if they've not got time to listen to the link.
Cool. Jessica, anything to add?
I would kind of say the same as the girls, to be honest. Kind of, you know, keeping it short and snappy, and keep persisting, depending on like who it is, like, and when you're, you know, in terms of the copy, making it kind of like obvious what each thing is, like what the track is, the track name, you know, a link to socials, and then maybe a link to like a press pack, which could be, you know, some photos and a biography. And I think those are kind of like the key elements that, you know, we'd look to straight away. And then based on that, we can like start to open the conversation a bit deeper, and discuss in more detail. So I'd say, you know, the kind of like the track name, maybe one or two sentences on any previous support, and then maybe a link to socials and anything like that.
Cool. Solid advice. So, FemHouse fam, what did we learn today? Stay authentic. Definitely slide in those DMs, but be snappy about it. Stay true to yourself, and don't be afraid. Abby, Lucy, Jessica, I'm quite fond of you. I'm so grateful for your time. Just for everybody watching, we talked about doing this like I want to say a year ago, maybe even a little bit.
Nearly a year, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm glad we finally got it done. It was as much of a pleasure as I knew it was. Thank you so much. I know the community thanks you. For everybody watching, this will be up on YouTube, so if you forgot to take notes, you're good. I am Hermixalot. These are the ladies of Infectious PR. Stay frosty. Bye.
Thanks so much. Thanks. Bye.